The National Desk, America's News Now.
The Israel-Hamas war hits day 5. Fighting escalates as the effort to save innocent civilians grows.
If you're an innocent civilian, you didn't cause this, you didn't ask for this, and you shouldn't be having to fear for your life. Nobody wants to see that happen.
Republicans have a speaker nominee, but America waits to see if he has the votes to win the gavel.
Steve Scalise got 113 votes. That is a majority. But how are you going to convince the other 100 and something all of a sudden just say, well, now we're all going to vote for Steve Scalise?
And airports around the country are on heightened alert just ahead, the illegal flying item being confiscated at a record pace. This is the National Desk. I'm Amira David. As we come on the air, negotiations have begun between the United States, Israel, and Egypt to allow safe passage for civilians to leave Gaza into Egypt. This as the death toll in the Israel-Hamas war continues to climb. Israeli rockets rained down on Gaza for a 4th night in retaliation of Saturday's unprecedented Hamas attack. Now, as of tonight, the loss of civilian life is absolutely astounding. In Israel, 1,200 people now dead, including 22 Americans. That number up from the original 14 Americans that were reported. More than 2,400 people there wounded. Meantime, the Gaza Ministry of Health reports 1,100 Palestinians have been killed, with over 5,000 wounded. Gazans are now without electricity. The territory's only power plant has run out of fuel amid an Israeli blockade on fuel, food, and medicine into the territory. There in Gaza, an untold number of Israelis and Americans remain hostages. A senior U.S. lawmaker today predicting a complex mission to get them out.
It's going to be very difficult going house to house, like Fallujah in 2005, to rescue these hostages when they use them as human shields. And it's very dangerous, but we have to get the Americans out, and we have to get the Israelis out.
This as Israel appears to be readying a ground incursion. Today, Israel creating a wartime cabinet to oversee its fight against Hamas. The U.S. military is providing assistance to Israel, but it remains to be seen if U.S. Special Forces will assist in any rescue efforts inside Gaza. As the war rages on, the National Desk's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman has the latest on the United States reaction from the White House about what's happening. Scott?
Yeah, Amira, we heard quite a bit from the president today. In fact, there were 2 different events where he came out and made comments regarding what's taking place in Israel, saying, of course, that there is absolutely no excuse for this kind of attack, that it is beyond the pale. And then he went on to say that this is one of the worst chapters in world history. What was significant is that he continued to say that America will provide whatever necessary support Israel needs in order to defend itself and to fight back. He didn't go into details into what that might include. We already know that weapons, ammunitions, sending a carrier group to the Mediterranean, all there to take part. But what we will do beyond that, still a little bit unclear. There is some exclusive reporting tonight from NBC News that says that Biden's staff has spoken to lawmakers on Capitol Hill and given them the heads up that he does plan to submit some sort of request for congressional approval for funding for Israel as well as for Ukraine and Taiwan. So 2 of those 3 already mired in war. Taiwan worried that that could come to its doorstep, and as well as more funding for the southern border. But it is significant that now this is being lumped together and that he will expect Congress to try to approve more assets to support Israel in whatever it needs.
Yeah, very significant. And Scott, lots of people at this point wondering to what extent the U.S. will get involved, particularly as we know the U.S. is already involved in Ukraine. What could we expect?
Well, the biggest headline coming out of the State Department today was that there were 22 American citizens who were killed in this attack. And you have 17, according to the White House, who are still unaccounted for. And that's why we will see America's military assets, intelligence, be playing somewhat of a constructive and active role moving forward. We don't know to what degree, but we know that Secretary of State Antony Blinken is headed to the region. We know that hostage rescue teams and negotiators may be part of that group. And so there are going to be the most strident efforts from this administration to try and get those Americans who are still alive and being held captive back on safe soil. Beyond that, there were also concerns about what's taking place in the north of the country, closer to Lebanon, where rocket fire has come in, they believe, at the hands of Hezbollah, another terror group. And so John Kirby was asked about that today at the White House. He said they do have grave concerns about what's taking place and how much responsibility Iran may have in all that, although at the moment that's quite contested.
All right, we will see how this all shakes out. Scott Thuman live in D.C. for us. Thank you as always. Meanwhile, presidential candidate and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott today doubled down on his assertion that President Biden is complicit for this war because of the $6 billion of sanctioned money that will be released to Iran for 5 released American hostages.
When you negotiate and give $6 billion, you create a market for hostages, and the response to that has been Iran and Hamas working together without much of a question. 90% of the money that comes into Hamas comes from Iran.
The administration maintains that the $6 billion has not been touched by Iran and therefore has not been used in connection with Hamas's actions. On Monday, a group of 19 Republican senators sent President Biden a letter urging him to refreeze that money to make sure it is not used for terror. Senator Tim Scott was not a signee. Well, you are taking a live look now over the Capitol, where GOP lawmakers could hold a House floor vote as early as tonight on the next Speaker of the House. Earlier today, House GOP members chose Steve Scalise as their Speaker nominee over Jim Jordan. In a closed-door vote, the final tally 113 for Scalise, 99 for Jim Jordan. The Louisiana rep, chosen after his colleague Kevin McCarthy was ousted as Speaker last week. Here's what Scalise had to say in his first remarks since winning support.
We have a lot of work to do, not just in the House for the people of this country, but we see how dangerous of a world it is and how things can change so quickly. We need to make sure we're sending a message to people all throughout the world that the House is open and doing the people's business.
Important to note, Scalise is far from securing the gavel. He must now win a full House floor vote. To do so, he'll have to unify Republicans to get the 217 votes needed. The House did convene this afternoon, but postponed a vote as the chamber is seemingly still divided on the issue. Embattled New York Republican Congressman George Santos one step closer to being ousted. This, as we learn, a group of House Republicans have introduced a resolution to expel him from Congress.
After the latest indictment, I think it's clear that he's not fit to serve in the House of Representatives. He's a stain on the institution, and that's why the New York freshmen have come together. He's also a stain on our state.
It comes a day after federal prosecutors issued Santos a 23-count indictment alleging he committed identity theft and fraud. Santos, who was first indicted in May, has pleaded not guilty to those charges. He's long called the charges a witch hunt, and he's vowed not to resign. The United States Supreme Court listened to arguments today in a dispute in South Carolina over racial gerrymandering. State Republicans there contesting a January ruling that said they withdrew a previously closely contested congressional district to remove thousands of black voters on purpose. They argue they were doing it in a partisan way, which federal courts can't rule on. The plaintiffs argue it was racially motivated to take away their representation. A revised map has not been drawn pending the high court's ruling. Guns brought to the airport. They are setting new records. Pittsburgh International Airport security confiscated their 36th firearm of the year, setting an annual record for the airport, and it's only October. It's not an isolated problem either. The TSA is on track to stop a record number of guns from getting through security at airports nationwide. The National Desk's Steve McCarran is in Seattle, where security screeners found 5 guns at checkpoints at the SeaTac airport just last week.
Photos released by the TSA show 3 of the 5 guns that were all stopped by officers during routine screenings of carry-on bags at SeaTac security checkpoints over a 4-day period just last week. All of them loaded.
It really is carelessness, is it not?
It is. At the root of it, it's carelessness.
The TSA's Lori Dankers says the guns are part of an alarming trend. 95 already discovered at SeaTac just this year. That's 3 more than at this point in 2022. And nationwide, the number is much bigger, nearly 5,100 fast approaching the record of more than 6,500 during all of last year. Dankers says the pandemic no longer an excuse for the behavior, with passenger rates returning to pre-pandemic levels.
That rate is concerning for us because what it means is people are just ignoring the rules. They're not taking into account what the consequences are.
Travelers caught breaking the gun rules can face stiff fines, anywhere from $3,000 to $10,700 for trying to bring one through a checkpoint, or even higher for repeat offenders. Investigators taking into account whether the gun was loaded, if the passenger is a repeat offender, and how the gun was discovered when determining how much that passenger will be forced to pay.
I'm hopeful that people will hear this, will think about it, will talk to people in their family or their friends who have a firearm. Hey, I heard that they're getting more of these at the airport. Don't do that. Don't be that person.
In addition to the 5 real guns, 2 replicas were discovered at SeaTac last week too. But Dankers warns those can't travel in carry-on bags either.
Steve McCarran, thank you. Coming up, Stellantis made an announcement today to create more jobs for the auto industry. The reason why this could see them back on Sean Fain's strike list come Friday. The country has received a report card when it comes to college aptitude tests, and the results, they are far from promising. More on that. And retail crime is hitting shopping malls across the United States. We have a tale of 2 cities when it comes to dealing with the epidemic. Happening right now, inflation ticking back up again after months of cooling down. New numbers released by the Labor Department today show that the producer price index had a 2.2% year-over-year increase from last September, and that's the largest uptick seen since April. On a month-to-month basis, producer prices rose 0.5% from August to September, higher than expected, and a sign that inflation continues to be a problem. Economists look closely at wholesale inflation because it can help predict what may happen with consumer prices as costs get passed down to shoppers. Well, Stellantis and Samsung SDI, they've picked Kokomo, Indiana, not Detroit, for its newest electric vehicle battery factory. This is seen by the UAW as a threat to job security. Under the expired contract that has led to a strike, EV battery facilities are not unionized. General Motors agreed last week to amend that in a new contract, but so far, Stellantis and Ford have not. The $3.2 billion facility is expected to be operational by 2027. The Biden administration is proposing new rules to eliminate so-called junk fees. New proposed regulations from the FTC would require industries across the economy, like ticketing providers, hotels, and rental services, to show the full price breakdown for everything up front. Biden spoke today about the fairness of transparency.
It's wrong. It's wrong. It's just taking advantage of people. And it makes it harder for honest businesses who are trying to do the right thing to compete with dishonest companies who trick customers into thinking their prices are lower when they in fact are not.
And new concerns tonight of the ripple effects of the Israel-Hamas war 6,700 miles away. Concerns of anti-Semitism are on the rise. Let's go to Kayla Gaskins, who has more.
As Israel reels from Hamas's surprise brutal attack, killing 1,200 and counting, Black Lives Matter chapters siding with the Palestinians. BLM grassroots NLA writing their resistance must not be condemned, but understood as a desperate act of self-defense. Adding, as a radical black organization, they see clear parallels between black and Palestinian people. BLM Chicago tweeting out this photo. BLM Washington, D.C. retweeting anti-Israel statements. Former NBA star Amari Stoudemire, who is Jewish, slamming the support.
It ain't never been cool to kidnap kids and put them in cages. It ain't never been cool to kill women and elderly. All you Black Lives Matter people who always had something to say and always supported everything else, and you quiet now, you too.
One Instagram user writing, I defended this movement in my circles against accusations of virulent anti-Semitism. And today, I guess I stand corrected. Shame. Chicago and D.C. chapters pulling the post down amid backlash. In New York, the president of the NYU Student Bar Association published a statement saying Israel bears full responsibility for the terror. The future employer rescinding the job offer, the law firm citing a profound conflict of values. Meanwhile, concerns for anti-Semitic violence increasing. Mayor Eric Adams urging New Yorkers to be on high alert.
We cannot let our guards down. We're the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and we want our synagogues, our personnel, to be extremely conscious.
According to FBI statistics, Jewish people make up only 2.4% of the U.S. population, but account for more than 50% of religiously motivated hate crimes. Anti-Islamic incidents make up nearly 10%. President Biden meeting with a roundtable of Jewish leaders Wednesday to discuss rising anti-Semitism in America. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Kayla, thank you. A new report today shows that scores on the ACT college entrance exam are now at their lowest level in more than 3 decades. The average ACT composite score for this year's graduating senior class was 19.5 out of 36. That's down from last year's 19.8, which was the first time in 31 years the average score was below 20. Unfortunately, the trend itself isn't new. Scores have been falling every year for the past 6 years and accelerated during the pandemic. And an uplifting story out of Ohio. First grader Helena Cunningham got a certificate for being one child hero. The elementary school student recognized by the County Communications Center and other first responders after she called 911 when her diabetic mother fell ill. She even got to meet the dispatcher she was talking with.
Knew all of the details, knew all of the information. It was one of the easiest calls I've ever taken.
I can tell when something's wrong because I've known this, because one day she told me about this when I didn't know. And then I knew, so I have to help her.
One astute first grader she is. Helena's mom, Jane, got the assistance she needed, and she is now doing well. Many health experts say an early morning workout session is important to help your metabolism throughout the day. But new reports, they say regular AM workout times might be tricking you into actually being less active. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains why.
Hey there, hello to you. This new study says the more we have a fixed workout time, the more likely we are to lounge around the rest of the day rather than keeping up the small steps that add up.
So why do you exercise? I exercise mostly for the energy.
As Tanya Moore knows, there are lots of great benefits to fitting in fitness time.
I exercise so I sleep well at night.
But this comprehensive fitness review of 24 studies published in Current Nutrition Reports found in nearly 7 out of 10 studies, people cut back on physical activities in their daily lives as sort of payback for tough workouts or training times. Researchers concluded we also think we deserve to eat more on days we get a structured workout, which could shift the balance for weight loss goals or heart health.
The day I exercise a lot, I might sneak in a candy or an ice cream, versus if I have not exercised at all, I feel guilty of eating something like that.
Dr. Gaurang Gandhi of Ohio's TriHealth is a cardiologist who says he isn't sure of the measurable benefit of daily activity slack-offs, but he says when it comes to the electrical problems of the heart he treats,
The recurrence rate is much higher if they are not exercising.
So he says, keep up the structured workouts. But Mayfield Brain and Spine physical therapist Becca Metz says, don't forget, the little stuff adds up too.
Every 30 to 45 minutes, if it works with your schedule, get up, grab a glass of water, go to the restroom, or even just walk around your house or the space where you are. Find a reason to stand up at your desk. Just do a little standing stretching. Set a timer or put a Post-it on your desk just to set that reminder for yourself.
So bottom line, we need to do the workout at a certain time, and we need to be active the rest of the day. I'm medical reporter Liz Bonus. Back to you.
All right, Liz, thank you. Coming up, one major metropolitan city fighting back against a rise in retail crime by investing in more retail stores. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From Tennessee shoppers taking extra precautions to avoid becoming the target of crime to a mall in Washington state addressing safety concerns, we are taking the pulse of America. And we start in Florida, where a group is raising money and supplies for Israel.
Jews hold a sense of responsibility for each other.
The B'nai Torah congregation in Boca Raton is teaming up with Hands on Tzedakah, also known as HOT, the local nonprofit now starting an emergency fund with the promise every dollar donated goes directly to those in Israel.
We can't buy food or go to Costco and get things to ship over to Israel. So we're talking about things which have to be available there and buyable there.
Whether it's food, water, battery-run battery chargers for those without electricity, or vests for volunteers on the streets, nothing is off the table.
Sometimes a toy makes a difference. It's just something that's going to occupy the child and, let them kind of drown out the sirens that are just keep going off and going off and going off.
The Westfield South Center Mall in Tukwila is one of the busiest in the state, and now it will be growing even more. But in the shadow of the expansion, there's a long list of crimes and safety concerns, including this video shared by the Daily Mail of an incident earlier this month with a naked man frightening adults and children at JCPenney. He was subdued by shoppers. Tukwila police say he was in crisis and is facing an assault charge. In August, police responded to a large fight involving kids. Last November, a man was shot and killed in the parking garage after police said he interrupted a car prowl. That same month, in a separate crime, thieves used a vehicle to smash through one of the entrances.
It's obviously good that there's a lot of people in the area that brings business to us. But at the same time, it adds a little bit more security risk because a lot of people are here.
A City of Tukwila official said over 15 million people a year come to Westfield South Center, but a fresh experience is key to those customers returning. They go on to add that safety is a top priority.
$112 billion. That's how much money retail stores across the country lost due to crime last year. That's up nearly $94 billion in 2021. All this according to the National Retail Federation. With major brands even boarding up and shutting down this year in large cities like San Francisco.
We're a big city now, so we're going to have big city problems.
But now that it's hitting close to home, local shoppers and workers, including Ann Murray, calling on a better system.
We have to have stricter laws. Why are they doing it? Because they can. They can get away with it.
Thieves struck Louis Vuitton on September 14th, with crooks taking thousands of dollars worth of goods. And 2 weeks later, a group targeted Gucci right next door.
When you read about the instances at Gucci and at the other stores that happened in broad daylight, and they beat up a security guard, and they're carrying pepper spray, it makes you a little leery. I think you have to be very cautious.
Coming up, the NASA update that's truly out of this world and their findings that could begin to solve the question, are we alone? NASA unveiled today its latest asteroid sample. I want you to take a look at this right now. Black chunks and dust were scooped up off an asteroid named Bennu, nearly 60 million miles away. It's the biggest asteroid sample ever returned to Earth and the first for NASA. NASA's administrator says what we are learning could provide information about life in the universe.
The carbon and water molecules are exactly the kinds of material that we wanted to find. They are crucial elements in the formation of our own planet. And they're going to help us determine the origin of elements that could have led to life.
Exciting stuff. Also exciting, it is Powerball night tonight. Another chance at winning what is now the second biggest prize in the game's history at $1.73 billion. The last time someone hit the jackpot, by the way, was July 19th. Their odds of winning are just 1 in 300 million, but there's always a chance, right? That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.